The Checkbook War: How Bankers Started and Funded World War I. History often summarizes the start of World War I with a single gunshot in Sarajevo, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which rapidly activated alliance systems. However, if we look deeper, the real spark was not a bullet, but the checkbook of a small group of powerful bankers. This is not a classic tale of imperial rivalry, but a hidden story of a financial arms race. Decades before 1914, the major European powers were drowning in massive debts. Empires were heavily leveraged to finance their relentless colonization in Africa and Asia, and to secure vital raw materials like cotton, oil, and rubber. These loans were not only secured from other governments, but increasingly from major private banks in London, Paris, and New York. Names like the Rothschilds, the Barings, and J.P. Morgan dominated this scene. These banks granted loans at high interest rates, often collateralized by future colonial taxes. By 1914, the global economy was a fragile debt pyramid tied to the gold standard. A commercial crisis or a small conflict could disrupt the flow of gold, pushing the entire system to the brink of collapse. German external debt. By 1913, Berlin's foreign debt had hit 20 billion marks as it struggled to compete with the British Navy. Russian debt. Tsar Nicholas borrowed from French banks to arm against the Ottomans, accumulating 6 billion francs in bonds. These imperial rivalries were not merely about pride or borders. They were economic lifelines, an effort to prevent bankruptcy, guarantee resources to maintain factory profits, and to repay the loans. When the war finally began, the flow of money did not stop, it dramatically escalated. The most notable action was the entrance of J.P. Morgan Jr. from Wall Street, supporting the Allies. The Morgan firm became the Allies' personal shopper, channeling $3 billion, over $80 billion today, in munitions, food, and steel as their exclusive agent. The historic loan. In 1915, Morgan granted a $500 million loan to Britain and France, the largest foreign bond issue at that time. These loans undermined American neutrality. Given that an Allied collapse would lead to a default on these massive loans and jeopardize the U.S. economy, the United States ultimately entered the war in 1917 to protect the Wall Street ledger. On the other side, Germany financed Austria-Hungary with 3.5 billion marks in credit from the Reichsbank and its private houses, while simultaneously draining their gold reserves to plug its own holes. The final result, a war that modernized finance. World War I cost $28 billion in total. Taxes covered only a fraction of that. The rest was financed by patriotic bonds and, most importantly, the end of the gold standard and the rampant printing of fiat currency. In 1918, as the guns fell silent, it was not the bankers who died in the mud, but the ordinary soldiers. While the trenches filled with bodies, boardrooms celebrated their financial victories. The end of the war was no true peace. The Treaty of Versailles, by imposing crippling reparations, drove Germany into a debt trap that contributed directly to economic crises and the rise of extremism in the following decades. World War I not only shattered empires, it gave birth to modern finance. It is a bitter reminder that sometimes the real battle is not fought on the battlefield, but in the vaults and ledgers, where debt and gold take priority over honor and human lives.